Welcome back. My name is Neil Charran, and this is the Gideon Star Chronicler. Sequels are hard. They're very, very hard. I'm currently writing a sequel to my self-published novel, Gideon Star, the Shields of Gideon Prime, and it's taking a long time. I'm having a difficult time with it in general, but it's more about that it's taking a long time. The first novel took me about a year to write, and then 2 years to edit. I'm a little bit better about editing now, so I'm hoping that turnaround will be shorter. But this now, in the reverse, is like taking me 2 years to write and probably 1 year to edit. And I understand now why there's so much difficulties with sequels, and why it's considered lightning striking in a bottle when a sequel hits the right notes and is superior to the original. The original is fresh and new. You're setting up all the rules. The sequel has to abide by those rules, but also expand on the world. Also, because of things that you set up in the original, the sequel has callbacks. There's things that it has to address, pay attention to, can't ignore. And it's actually very difficult. In fact, certain small things like, can they do that? Did I write it so that they could do that? I don't remember. Or, did I say this was possible, or did I say that this was impossible in the prior novel? Small things like that. I remember, I think there was some anecdote on Game of Thrones with the books. A horse was white and male, and the same horse became brown and female or something like that. And so, small inconsistencies you have to forgive us for, but larger ones, especially ones that are meaningful to the story arc, we want to make sure we get that right. In fact, I more than likely, after I'm done writing, whenever you want to call it the first draft is complete, I have a complete beginning, middle, and end, I'm going to have to reread my first book again, which in general I don't recommend, just because you will see things that you would have done differently knowing what you know now than you did years ago. But I have to do that. I have to reread it to make sure that I address all the things that I set up there while setting up new things, because I'm basically making a trilogy. Not directly intentional, but this was something that I knew the story in its completeness would take 3 books, possibly 4, but I believe I can do it in 3. And then there's more stories. The reason why I bring this up is because I mentioned in a prior video that things that I want to do to garner an audience includes using Wattpad. Obviously I'm doing YouTube and just making my presence known. And for Wattpad, I decided to base the story in the Gideon Star universe. The first story I'm writing right now for Wattpad is based in the universe, and this story sets up another story, it sets another story, but the thing is, they're shorter stories too. The idea is 50 to 100 pages to create a serial. And the idea is that I would, these serials are not one-offs. There's a larger arc that they serve, but they're very individual. And I started to make outlines, and I made outlines for a second, then a third, then a fourth, and a fifth. I have 10 outlines while I'm working on my sequel, and they're coming very easily, very freely, and I didn't really understand why. Why am I having so much difficulty with the sequel, but not with, these connected stories, but they're not directly sequels? And that's basically the answer: sequels versus serials. And then I realized that's the issue that Disney has versus Marvel. Marvel technically is a serialization. If you think about Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, they're stories with the same characters, but one is not necessarily based upon the another. In fact, Iron Man 3 is more about the aftermath of the Avengers and, aliens now being a thing on Earth, and Tony Stark having to deal with that almost like in a PTSD kind of way. But they're all separate stories. Thor, Thor the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok are 3 very different Thor Ragnarok, obviously, a lot more comedy. Taika Waititi directing that and having more influence on that versus Kenneth Branagh in the first Thor. They're different. The characters are there, but they're all different stories, and that's what made me realize the only actual direct sequel that I can think of, and please let me know in the comments below if you disagree or if you can think of something that you would consider a direct sequel, is Infinity War to Endgame. That's the only thing I can think of that are sequels, and they did that right. They wrote it basically as one story arc in two parts, to be told in two parts. One has a beginning, middle, and the end. The other has a beginning, middle, and the end, but the two serve together. Whereas Star Wars, for example, the original Star Wars, I apologize, I make specific between Disney Star Wars and Stars. I know Disney Star Wars is in the title. The original Star Wars was technically supposed to be its own story. George Lucas had hoped for a sequel, or had hoped for something, to be made after, but it was never a direct intent. Whereas once Star Wars became so successful, Empire Strikes Back and more or less Return of the Jedi, with a few caveats, was planned out. Once you had the reveal of Vader, he technically knew how he wanted it to end. He didn't necessarily know how he was going to get there, but in fact, there's a wonderful note by Richard Marquand about it, that it had come from the sister angle, which is, so they knew that there was going to be the battle and confrontation. We all knew there was going to be a battle and confrontation with Darth Vader, but they didn't know how to put the emotional content into it, and that's when they came up with the sister idea. So it wasn't directly planned. It wasn't, I shouldn't say it wasn't planned note for note, but there was a greater arc that was planned. Disney Star Wars, unfortunately, I think JJ left some notes, but I get now what Rian Johnson did. He created a serial. He did not create a sequel. He cheated a little bit by answering the questions in the sequel by basically making them throwaways. I mean, it's the equivalent. The whole Last Jedi can be sort of epitomized by Luke tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder. We're throwing away The Force Awakens, and I'm doing my own story. I mean, that's basically what that is. And I get it now. I get what sequels are hard. Sequels are very hard. And if you're not up for it, if you don't like what came before, or not interested in that, I could do that. I could completely disregard a bunch of stuff I wrote in my first book, and just carry on with no answers or direct linkages. It's quite amazing, because that's basically what I'm doing with the serial that I intend to write. And so, respectfully, I understand now, to people who enjoy The Last Jedi, I also understand now what happened with Disney Star Wars and how it's so disjointed. They are technically all separate movies. They're serials. They're Flash Gordon movie of the month or the week, or they're not, Monster of the Week. They're not connected. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, Return of the King, that's a trilogy. That's a trilogy. There's a ring, it's bad, we need to destroy it. We're on our way to destroy it. So some fighting gets in the way, we then destroy it, right? It's all connected, it's linked. Things that happen before come back. So Boromir's death, there's a consequence for it in the next story. Just so many different things, letting the hobbits go, other hobbits being mistaken for them, just there, and nothing's left to linger. In fact, Fellowship of the Ring, the way the Fellowship of the Ring ends for setup for the Two Towers, is the hunt to save the two mistaken kidnapped hobbits, Merry and Pippin. That's the way it's supposed to be. And I get now what the issues are. So advice to storytellers are, it's okay to do almost like a detective story, serial. So Philip Marlowe, or something like an Indiana Jones, where they're not necessarily connected directly to each other, but the character is kind of the same character throughout. We're not going to go into Luke Skywalker right now. I'm going to create a Last Jedi video separately, but where the characters more or less are the same characters throughout that we can follow. James Bond, although they are attempting sort of sequel-ish kind of things with Daniel Craig, more or less is a serial. There are some interesting points like Roger Moore's James Bond in The Spy Who Loved Me. Agent XXX is talking to him about his dead wife, which happened on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which was George Lazenby, which has nothing, which was a direct play off of the Sean Connery character. So it's the same character with similar things happening throughout, played by different actors or placed in different settings, but it's the same character. That's basically it. Indiana Jones, same guy, archaeologist, believes that artifacts should be in museums. Is going to throw himself into bodily harm. Maybe even to a larger extent, the Mission Impossible movies are more serials than direct sequels. They tie them together with the characters so they feel like sequels, but they really aren't. And that's actually a beautiful note for storytelling. Perhaps with the new Disney Star Wars, perhaps with the new Disney Star Wars, they'll make them serials as opposed to trying to make sequels. Sequels are very hard. They need to be planned out. There needs to be setups and payoffs, not just in the book, but in the larger arc. So something in the first book needs to be paid off in the second or the third, or in the first story needs to be paid off in the second or the third. The real preference is to pay off in the third, so that it really feels connected. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I'm going to try, but it's actually much harder than I could possibly tell you. But I'm making progress, and I'll talk more about that in another video. Anyway, guys, I hope this helped you. I hope we all can come to an understanding, can come together as a community. I still love Star Wars, and I hope for great things from it in the future. I love storytelling. I look forward to your comments and any suggestions you have and any advice you've gotten. And want to remind you to keep writing. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. And remember to hit that notification bell as new videos appear. Thanks so much. Keep writing.